Welcome into this Five Clubs conversation. My name is Emma Carpenter, and this is my first time here live in the studio. I am so excited for my guest today to join me here on Five Clubs, and that is Karen Stupples. Karen Stupples is a superstar, a collegiate Division I player at Florida State, an LPGA Tour major winner, as well as a Golf Channel broadcaster and analyst for both the LPGA and PGA Tour, the first ever female, I might add, to be an analyst for a PGA Tour event. So she is an excellent person. I am so excited to sit down with her today, and I know that you are going to enjoy the listen. And with that, I welcome in Karen Stupples. Karen, thank you so much for being here today and joining me.
It's my pleasure. I'm just happy that you want to talk to me. So thank you.
Today is my first day here in Charlotte, right here in the Five Club studio. I'm typically remote, so very exciting. Like I said, my first time in Charlotte, my first time in the studio. So it's an absolute honor to have you here. You just got back from the NCAA Women's National Championship. How was that?
You know, it's always an amazing experience for me because, I cover professional golf most of the year, and to go and see what I consider to be golf in its purest form, sort of unencumbered by sponsor obligations and, the money side of things. They're playing to win. The players are just playing to win. This is for school pride. There's a whole lot at stake for them. They're playing for each other. When you play on a golf team, or because you've been there, that's your family, and so you're playing for your school's family, and there's a lot at stake for you, and emotionally as well as on the golf course too. I think there are some players that are there that are, this will be the final time that they play for their college team, and so there's always a roller coaster of emotions, and that to me is just pure golf. Like they're there for the competition and for school pride. And that to me is a very special thing.
I love that. Yeah, exactly like you say, basically like pure love for the game, pure want to win for no other desire. And how neat is it that, like you said, your last chance playing kind of for a team, unless, having the opportunity to play in a Solheim Cup like you have or other things like that. So it changes things and makes it different when you have that match play aspect of it. Speaking of your alma mater, Florida State, they were there in the quarterfinals. Was that fun? Oh, was that fun to support though?
It was fabulous. They came so close last year. It was kind of heartbreaking with Alice Hodge there on the final hole last year, just to not quite get the job done, to not get into match play. And even this year, they were so close with Bridges Wallin, like being right there, going down to the 19th hole in her match. It was just, I'm commentating on her match, and it's so hard to be impartial and not to be rooting for them. I'm like, okay, I have to just talk golf here. I have to just talk golf and not get all emotional about the whole thing. But it was particularly important, cool for her, because to get through the match play and to try and, to be the one where it was kind of all riding on, because she came back to college to finish off her season there with them. She could have turned pro like so many others do. She has status on the Epsom Tour, and she could have just gone off and played professional golf, but she decided to help Amy Bond out, the coach at Florida State, and go back to school. And she's given her team an opportunity at least.
It's so heartbreaking, even just watching it. My dad always told me when I started playing golf, he said it always comes down to a shot, and it always does. In those matches, when it comes down to one stroke is the difference for your team, it's crazy and it's intense. I know, watching it.
It's interesting. I'm good friends with a lady called Laura Tyson, and she's a Vanderbilt alumni, and she's actually on their board. And she was asking me, because she was going to go and talk to the team, and she said to me, what should I tell them? What advice would you give me to tell the team? And I said, fight for every single one shot, which is exactly what you said, because every single one shot, because you never know when it's going to count. And I said, no matter how badly you're feeling on the golf course, because your golf may or may not be up to what you expect, fight for those shots for your teammates, because you never know when it's going to help. So value your teammates over your hurt pride more.
I love that. I love that. That's great, especially in match play, like we're talking about. I feel like you can tell yourself early on, oh, it's early in the match. There's still time to make things up, but coming down to the stretch, those shots early, no matter where they happen in the round, those shots still matter, right?
They do, and with match play too, that if you get two down, one down is no big deal. That's that's just swings and roundabouts. But if you get two down, all of a sudden it just seems like such a big mountain to overcome. So you have to try hang in there for as long as you can, and hopefully turn it around. But
right.
You can't let shots go.
Right. And that's when you start pressing and start making bigger mistakes. So yeah. Something that I really want to ask your opinion on. You've been through it all, the high junior golf level, the collegiate golf, the professional golf, and now doing the broadcasting, the commentating. When you're watching there at the women's national championship, I mean, the majority of these young women are aspiring professionals. I mean, I'm sure they look up to you as many other professionals and former professionals. What is something that you notice in watching all of these young athletes that kind of separates the ones who finish on top, who win and finish in the top, as opposed to the ones who don't? What do you think is that factor?
There are so many things that go into a player's success at any kind of level. Sure, you can see a good golf swing, you can see good ball strikers, but the players that achieve, the ones that go on and do greater things, have some intangibles that no amount of coaching could ever teach. A lot of it is self-belief, believing in your own abilities, not letting anybody say anything that's going to interfere with your self-belief on how you are on the golf course, trusting in yourself, knowing that what you have is good enough to win. You don't have to be anything other than yourself. So that's one of those things that I think is huge. The other one is just an obscene work ethic, just to work hard, just to be single-minded, determined, just focused on your goals. And the other one is to compartmentalize, is to be kind of where you're focused on those individual goals, small goals to form a big goal. So I guess that's being process orientated more than anything else, and being emotionally detached from the results. There's so much that goes into being successful, and you can try and pin it down to one or two things. And for the most part, players believe that they have to have a perfect swing, or they have to have a perfect putting stroke. That's not true. I mean, the thing that I always like to say is all you have to do is just look at Jim Furyk. I mean, would you ever think that he would be the guy to have a 58 and a 59? No, you'd think it'd be Tiger Woods, right? But it's not. It's Jim Furyk. So you don't have to be perfect. It's just about it's the mental side of it as much as anything.
Yeah, and is that something that you feel like you can notice even just by observing who has that confidence, that mindset of that really nobody can get in and affect how they feel?
You can really see it in the players, and at the college level, you can see it within the coaches too, and how the coaches instill that confidence in their players. It's not really a surprise to see Stanford continually, throwing out great team after great team. Ann Walker, the coach there, does a fabulous job in how she preps her team and how she talks to them and how she makes them believe in themselves. And in the same way as Derek Radley, there at Oregon now too. He does the same thing with his players. And that's so big. But the difference then becomes, can they transfer that from having somebody to help prop them up at college level to then doing it on their own as an individual when you're up against everybody else that's also trying to do the same thing. So that you can definitely see it. As you've transitioned from college golf into professional golf, I'm starting to see a trend, certainly on the women's side of things now too. We've already seen it happen in the men's side of things, that longer players are starting to achieve more. So even in the women's game, the longer you are, the better chance of having an elongated career, so to speak. You're going to have better scoring options. You're not going to have to rely so much on your short game, which causes a lot of stress. So the longer you are off the tee now, the better off you are. It's becoming a much more athletic game. And you see that throughout college and it's transitioning now into the LPGA Tour.
Interesting that you bring that up. I feel like that's been such a hot topic in golf over the last few years, especially in the men's, but then even now more so. I would just say kind of in the last few years in the women's game. I mean, first a few years ago with Bryson DeChambeau and the extreme transition, the shift that he made, the changes he made, and the difference that made for him statistically. It's definitely interesting. So back in high school, I learned to play golf. I played golf on the boys' high school team. And it was like I was constantly surrounded by like hit the ball as far as you can, by that being the mentality, and that's kind of like how I learned to play golf a little bit. And it's interesting, but I mean, I noticed when I play in college with players who really impress me, they have that distance, they have that power. It's like playing a different game. It really is that advantage.
It is, and I think that for a number of years that the average drivers of the golf ball or distance players have been able to get away with it, so to speak. I'm thinking Inbee Park, Lydia Ko's. They've been world number ones, hitting it fairly average in terms of distance wise. Mm-hmm. But now you're seeing a transition that even Lydia Ko's trying to find more distance. And you look at Inbee Park, she still can compete if her putt is hot, but if it's not hot, she doesn't compete anymore. The competitive desire hasn't left her. It's just the distance is not there.
Why do you think that shift has happened over the years? Why it's so much more prevalent now as it was in the past? Is it women are just getting more distance and it's proving to show, or why do you think that is?
I think it stems from coaching, to be honest with you, because for the longest time, women have been told, oh, keep it in the fairway, hit it straight, be accurate. Women haven't ever been told, go out there and pound on that golf ball, hit it as far as you can, and then live with whatever happens. Mm-hmm. That's not, for the longest time, how women were taught how to play golf, unless they were lucky like you or I, where we grew up playing with the boys. Mm-hmm. And then in that case, you kind of grow up thinking like the boys and you play like the boys. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. If you're not in that environment and you've got a coach or your dad or someone else, just keep it in play, hit the ball in the fairway, make some putts. That's how you're taught. And of course, it comes to a certain point in your life that you just can't gain that kind of speed anymore, right, even when you want to, because you're so conditioned to just the mindset of just keeping it down the fairway, bunt it down the fairway, keep it in play. So the transition is in thinking and in coaching, and how people coach women and how people coach us how to play golf from a young age. And you're starting to see the transition happen now.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure that's definitely shifting down into junior golfers, young girls who are learning to play golf. I mean, now with, I mean, you've got so many of these big power hitters like Maria Fassi. I mean, all these young women who can really put it out there. So I would not be surprised if it continues to trend in that direction. I definitely want to touch on a little bit more about that transition from college to professional golf. But firstly, I mean, since you were just there, I need to get your opinion. Like you mentioned, Stanford had an unbelievable team this year. It was kind of hard not to root for them just because they had such a great team. I mean, Rose Zhang, incredibly impressive, and her teammate Rachel Heck. What do you notice about those two players? Obviously, they're different players, they're different people. What do you think that each of them has that gives them that it factor?
It's very different, I think.
Right.
Rachel Heck is a very well-rounded individual who already understands that golf isn't going to define her. She knows that no matter what happens in her life, she's going to be just fine. She has aspirations greater than golf. And it's something that I think that runs through her whole family, having met most of them. And so she's a very special person in that department. So golf isn't going to define her, which kind of frees her up on the golf course to play her best kind of game. Has been sick this year. She's been fighting mono, so it's been a bit of an issue for her in terms of the amount she's been able to play in practice. So we didn't see the real Rachel Heck at NCAAs this year, but we saw her last year. So we know what she's got. And then when you talk about Rose Zhang is very Lydia Ko-like in so many ways. I had a really good chance to speak to her this past week. And I was so impressed with how mature she was, how just on top of everything, much like Lydia Ko is always on top of everything, very thoughtful with her responses to questions. And in general, she knows what's going on out on the golf course across the board. I think Stanford going to college is just like a cherry on the top of her, because her playing resume is second to none. When you think about winning the amateur championship, the US women's amateur, the women's junior, all of these things, create a well-rounded resume that a number of players might have turned pro already and said, you know what, I'm just going to go turn pro. I'm going to go start making a living.
Right.
But she decides to go to Stanford because she wants that little bit to kind of, I don't know. I think players need balance. And I think what this has done for her is created balance, which is an even more scary prospect when you think of all of that talent, golf game wise. She's pretty, I mean, she's not the longest. I know we've just talked about length. She's not the longest, but she's long enough. Yeah, but she's long enough, and she's very steady across the board. So I don't know how it translates yet into professional. I mean, we'll get a glimpse of it when she goes and plays at Dana in Toledo, because the winner of the individual championship gets an invite to play in that LPGA event later this year. So we'll get a chance to see it. But I think at the moment, it will translate quite well, just as long as she stays true to who she is. Because as soon as you start trying to chase that distance, if you don't have it, it becomes a difficult prospect.
Right. In the interviews that I've watched with her or any other things like that, she definitely, I completely agree with you. I was very impressed. I thought she seemed extremely mature and just very thoughtful, very genuine, just a good head on her shoulders.
Well, and the friendship that she has with Rachel Heck too is very cool. Like the pair of them have really come together as friends. And when you think about how competitive they are with each other in every event that they play in, to have that kind of a friendship with somebody who you're competing against is kind of a nice special bond. I mean, I also ought to give big props to Aileen Crowder too, who also plays on the Stanford team. She was a senior, so she's finished after this, but she won the Women's British Amateur Championship. So in terms of match play experience, she brings a lot to the table there too. And just from top to bottom, Stanford as a team they're deep. And at college golf, if you've got 5 players that can at any moment go off and shoot a great number, or you can rely on in match play, you know that you're onto a winning formula.
Right. Yep. Depth in college golf is huge. You mentioned Rose Zhang and her decision to finish up at Stanford or go to Stanford before turning professional, even though she's clearly a lot of people might be questioning why advising her to turn professional. I really want your opinion on, witnessing the evolution of golf over so many years. How valuable do you see college golf, the experience of college golf in terms of preparation for turning professional for the LPGA Tour or the PGA Tour? A lot of players do choose to forego college, and how valuable do you see the college golf experience? And has that changed?
Obviously, you can see it both ways. There are players that, quite frankly, college is not meant for them. Whether they're good students or not, some people find going to school very difficult. They may not have had a good time when they were in school, and they might just be ready to turn pro and just move on to another phase of their life. So totally understand that from that perspective. They may just be, it could be a financial situation too for some players. Like they just can't continue to play the amateur golf scene and to keep progressing, even though college would be funded. The amateur golf scene outside of it is not. So there was differences there, but now we have the name, image, likeness on the scene. I think that will impact whether players decide to turn pro or not. I think we see it with Rose Zhang. She has a few deals in that department. And I think it's allowed her that little bit of freedom and flexibility to say, okay, I'm going to go to Stanford now, so I don't have to make money, so I don't have to turn pro. I can actually go and enjoy my life, live a little bit for myself.
Get a college degree.
I'm not even so sure that is what, I mean, I don't know if that's what her ultimate goals are.
Yeah,
I mean, if you go to Stanford, you must have some, if you go to Stanford, you must have a few brain cells knocking around up there. But I'm thinking, But I'm thinking that for however long she stays at college, I mean, she could be, she could still finish her degree, even if she's off playing the LPGA. There's still always that option for her.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how long she stays, the experience is invaluable because she's standing on her own 2 feet. She doesn't have her mum and dad hovering around over her every step of the way, watching, everything that she's eating, everything that she's exercising, making sure that she's practicing umpteen hours a day or whatever it is. She has freedom to be herself and to realize who she is when she's on the campus there at Stanford. She's being with friends. She's knowing what Rose Zhang wants and when Rose Zhang wants it. And that's huge because when you go off onto the LPGA, it can be very claustrophobic if you're still having everybody travel around with you and do all of that. You will see that because you can't rent a car until you're 25, basically. So she'll still have some of that, but at least she'll understand what it's like and what she wants. So I always remember a scene from The Runaway Bride. It's an old movie because I'm an old person.
Yeah.
But when Julia Roberts is trying to decide what kind of eggs she wants, because she's always had the kind of eggs that her guy has been making. Like she goes with the eggs that her guy wants. But she wanted to find out what eggs she likes. So she sat there with a whole bunch of eggs to try what she wanted. And in many ways, that's what going to college is like. You figure out what kind of eggs you like.
Oh, well, that's a neat analogy. I love that. So you think that it's interesting. A lot of what you mentioned is not even necessarily about the competitive, some of the tournaments, but more so figuring out who you are and
yep.
Like you said, what kind of eggs you like. So I love that.
Yep.
I love that. Speaking of that transition from college to professional, I want to hear a little bit more from you personally about that transition. It's to my understanding that after you finished up at Florida State, you went back to the UK, just outside of England, before then returning back to the United States to turn professional. Can you tell me a little bit about how this happened?
I can. I was one of those students that didn't find study very easy. I have ADD and I'm dyslexic. So being in class was not the easiest thing for me. So it literally probably would have taken me about 1,000 years to graduate. And I'm probably not exaggerating. I was that player that I would go to my coach and say, these are this is my schedule for this semester. And she'd look at it and say, okay, you need to drop trig and pick up basketball because we need you to stay eligible. So that was me. So it was going to take me a long time. And I kind of had hit the wall academically at Florida State, and it just was going to be impossible for me to keep going. So I ended up leaving early. I went back to England. I wasn't ready. Well, I was ready to turn pro, I guess. I wasn't sure if it was something that I was even going to be good enough to do, to be honest. I went back to England. I had jobs. I worked in restaurants and bars and doing all of that stuff and played the amateur scene. And it was hard work. I was trying to save money to turn pro, waited tables. And one of my customers said, why haven't you turned pro yet? And so I told him that I was saving money. He said, well, I'll give you the money to try. And
wow.
long story short, without Keith Rawlings, I don't know where I'd be right now. But so he gave me the money to try. I came out to America to Q school and I went through qualifying school. I got my card first time, but it wasn't an easy transition. I didn't make my first cut until I think it was May. So I didn't make my first cut until May. I didn't play in many events before that though either. And money was running out. Everything was getting very stressful. But somehow I made my first cut. I played in a pro-am that paid me some money, and I found a sponsor all in the same week. And wow. I always say that I have been very, very lucky to have found my way here and to be in the position that I'm in, because so many things happened at Crossroads where it could have gone either way. And it always turned out to work in going my way. So I ended up doing that, had a top 10. Next thing I know, I'm on tour for 15 years. But it was different because as soon as I came out on tour, I looked around and I saw a lot of very good players that all played well. And I'm like, okay, I'm not as good as I thought I was. And so you then have to go through I had a bit of a reassessment of my golf game. And I think everybody goes through that. And the question is how you come out of it the other end. For me, I was lucky. I had a great coach. We had a good plan. I was one of those obsessively hard workers, and I just threw everything at it. And by being obsessively hardworking, also kind of means you're very selfish at the same time. So I had a very selfish streak, uh, but it helped me transition from being a good amateur into being a winner on the LPGA tour. Just because of the work, I had to make some changes to my swing to facilitate better quality shots and golf.
Extremely impressive what you were able to do. So congratulations on I know that you earned exempt status in 2000 for on the LPGA tour, and then it was in 2004, which I'm sure has got to be one of, if not the highlight of your professional career at the Women's Open at Sunningdale. Would you consider that? Would you consider that the highlight or one of?
It has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, it's like I think the first win that I got in Tucson, that was pretty special because that's your first win, and you never know. You don't really know if you're ever going to win until you do. That's the thing. You kind of hope that you do, but until you actually get your hands on a trophy, you don't know if that's going to be the thing. And I wasn't sure if winning a major championship was ever going to be my future. Obviously, you dream about it and you hope for it to happen. And for me, I really felt like the Chevron Championship at Mission Hills was going to be my best chance of winning a major because that golf course really suited me. I really liked it. There was a lot going on there for me that I enjoyed. Links golf courses and British Opens for me were kind of, that's where I grew up. And so I know them well, but I also know how fickle they can be too in terms of the weather conditions and the bounces and what happens. So I never really saw myself ever winning a British Open. I always saw myself winning maybe the Chevron. So at the start of 2004, my coach said to me, because we had to sit down and we worked out the plan of where I was going to play, and because everybody peaks at certain times. And so I was trying to peak for those majors to get my game in just the right spot. He says, how do you feel about Sunningdale, which was where I won the British Open? How do you feel about Sunningdale? I said, no, it's kind of, I don't know. It's no a good way. Course. I like it because it's not inland. It's not links. It's kind of in between. It's kind of, and he's like, he said, I feel like you're going to have a great week there. And he said this to me in January. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And sure enough, I went ahead and won. It was crazy. I can't, like I said, so much of my journey through golf, I've had moments like that you just kind of think, just meant to be. Some things were just meant to be. And I look at what I'm doing now, and I look at the career I have now, talking golf on TV and talking to you on here about golf in general. And I think without winning that British Open, I wouldn't be in the position I am now. And this feels to me, talking golf is what I should have always been doing.
Wow.
But without my experiences along the way, I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be here. So I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I was able to help my family, and we didn't have very much, so I was able to get cars for my parents, and redo their bathrooms and pay off mortgages and things like that without winning we wouldn't be able to do. And it just, I don't know, it just felt like that was what I was meant to do.
I love hearing that talking golf and doing what you are now is what you feel like you were meant to do. And I want to touch on that more, but one last thought that I have that I would absolutely love to know about that moment at Sunningdale, when you won and when you clinched that win. In that moment, when, I mean, you're at the peak, right? You are the best of the best, and in that moment right there, what you do, you cannot go any higher, right? You can't do any better. So, I mean, you're the best of all the women playing. So I want to know how long that feeling of fulfillment and feeling that you're the best, how long does that last?
Oh, it's going to be a complicated answer because it's not as simple as that one moment.
Okay, that's all right.
Because throughout the course of that week, I felt like I was the best over every single shot individually. And everybody talks about being in the zone. They talk about hitting one shot at a time. I was very much in one shot at a time mode because I was so hooked on the feeling of how I was hitting the ball. And I don't know any other way to describe it as that. I was obsessed with the quality of my strike. I was striking the ball so well that it was so much fun that I just couldn't wait to get to the next shot to hit it, because it was just the feeling of the ball off the club face, watching the ball fly as I'd pitched it in my head. Everything was right there where it needed to be. The score didn't matter. Like, whatever happened, I didn't care. I just couldn't wait to feel that feeling off the club face. I mean, it was like a dream, because it was so perfect and so pure. And so I went that whole week that way, but I was brewing for it the week before at Evian when I finished fourth. And then I had to have a quick turnaround. I stayed at home in England and celebrated my victory after winning. And then I was playing in Toledo the following week, and I'd made a commitment to play in a tournament, and they weren't sure if I was going to show up to play, because I just won and didn't want to stay and hang with my family. But I flew on the Wednesday. I got in and I literally teed it up on the Thursday, having not played the practice round or a pro-am or anything. And I finished second to Meg Mallon. So I was still playing quality golf. It wasn't so much the feeling of being the best over everybody else. It was being the best for myself that I was feeling, the best version of me and what I was able to do. And that's one of the lessons that you learn when you do win, is that this is just being the best version of you. You can't compare yourself to anybody else. You can't try and be anybody else. You can only be the best that you can be. And at Sunningdale I was pretty close to it on the weeks either side, over every single shot that I played. And that's really what it boils down to.
You're absolutely right. It goes back to exactly how you said of you can never question your own game and what you have. If you're confident in what you have and not searching for anything more, then that's what's going to separate you.
I think everybody, even, when you think about you and your game, and when you've hit even just that one shot that was perfect, that in your mind, the strike of the club face was just amazing. Like, and even on the driving range, it could be just a shot on the driving range. You're like, oh, that was it. That was it. That's what I want. I had a whole tournament that felt like that.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, I'm like, I don't know how else to describe it, but I was definitely not thinking about the win or anything else up until the final hole of there, and I'm like, oh, I could win this.
Up until the final hole. Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. I can definitely relate to when I think about the times when I've played my best. It's oftentimes it's not the whole round even that I think about, or the score or the win or whatever that may be. It's always just that feeling of being excited to hit the next shot, right? So I love that. So speaking of, like you've said, that win, kind of propelled you into the rest of your future on the tour, and then now what you do now, talking golf on TV, broadcasting, commentating. I know you joined Golf Channel in 2013. Can you tell me just about when you knew that was going to be a future for you, or how this kind of fell into your lap?
Oh, again, it's going to be a long one. So in 2007, I had my son Logan. And at the time, I was just coming back to playing golf when the BBC asked me if I would do radio coverage for the Open at Carnoustie. So I'm like, sure, this would be great. After having a year of not making any money, sure, I'd like to earn a little bit of money. That'd be kind of nice. And try and replenish my bank account just a little bit, because when I was pregnant, I had Logan, all the sponsors said, no, thank you. We're gonna move away. Now, fortunately, everything's changed and they stay. But back then they didn't. So I worked at the Open, and I loved the chat in the media center, the discussion about golf, the course, the setup, the who's doing what, where, and why, and just talking with the writers about what was going to happen. I just loved the talk. So I had a great time doing that. And so I'd worked a little bit for the BBC's after that, at the Men's Open and at the Women's Open, kind of filling in time here and there when I wasn't playing. And then in 2013, I kind of had an epiphany, and I'm like, I'm so tired of playing tournament golf. Like, it just, a couple of things happened. One, I got paired with some people that I didn't want to play golf with. I'm like, I don't want to spend my time playing golf with these people, trying to make money. Like, this is not
Yeah.
fun for me anymore.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to spend time on the grind. Not so much the grind of when I was away, but when I was at home, I didn't want to spend time, 10, 12 hours on the driving range when I could be spending it with my son, who was in school by then.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so hard, because I've always been, like I said, I am that throw everything at it, work so hard. My hands hurt so much. Like, I worked so hard, and I was getting nothing back, and I was sacrificing so much time with my son. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is hurting my soul to not be with my son, to be spending so much time on my golf and feel like golf is just hating on me all the time. And that's the thing. Like, it became an emotional thing for me, that I felt that golf hated me, and I was trying so hard to make golf love me, but golf was hating me. It was the ultimate unrequited love. I mean, it was so difficult. And I'm like, I need to find something else. I need to do something different. So I immediately thought of trying to do more commentary. Obviously the BBC and working was an easy option for me, because I already had a little in there, but they don't cover enough golf for me to make a living doing it with them. So Golf Channel was a good option. They covered all the LPGA, and I'm like, I'll just see if that could possibly work. So what I did was I kind of tagged along. I kind of went along and watched, and see if it was something I could do. And the producer at the time was a lady called Beth Hutter. She actually has just retired this year, but I went up to her. It was Toledo in 2013, and I said, everything happens in Toledo, it sounds like, for me. But so anyway, I was in Toledo. And she says, actually, we could do with a third on course here. You fancy giving it a try? I was like, sure. So I put a pack on, and I went out, and I followed a group and interviewed in B Park. And little did I know that was kind of my audition. And I passed, and I started to get a few more opportunities. But I ended up doing a bit of booth, being an analyst in the booth a couple of times too. And I just kind of put my foot in the door and kind of forced it open, because I'm not sure that they were really looking for me. Or for somebody like me, and I just knew that I wanted to do it, and I loved it, and I have a passion for talking about golf and figuring out how and why and problem solving, and here I am, still doing it, which is awesome. I'm incredibly lucky now that I get a chance to do some men's golf as well, which I really love, because there's so many facts and figures in that, and it really kind of scratches that analytical itch that I have.
Right. Yeah. I definitely want your take on some comparisons between the LPGA and PGA Tour. But, you were the first ever female analyst to do a PGA Tour event on Golf Channel. I mean, what an amazing accolade. What an amazing thing to have. So, I mean, what are some of the challenges that have come with this transition into broadcasting, and maybe partially being a female in the industry, one of the first females to really break through?
I feel like I've had some great role models. I mean, you think of Judy Rankin. She's always been there for me with any questions I have. She's been a great friend and role model to me throughout my time. Dottie Pepper as well. I mean, there have been Donna Capone, a number of women that have been there and done that. But for me, the difficulties are that you're transitioning from a job where you're in charge of everything. Like, I was my own boss. I played a schedule that I wanted when I wanted, and I worked as hard as I wanted to at it, into a business that is very subjective. If people like you, you get work. If people don't like you, you don't. And so that to me was very different. I also think that women in general commentating in men's sports face, some stereotypes that, they've never hit the ball 350 yards. How are they going to talk about men's golf? That's not, that's so wrong. It's like, sure, no, I granted I haven't hit the ball 350 yards. That's not to say I don't know what it feels like to try and thread a driver down the 18th hole on the final hole of a
It's likely
tournament to
that
win.
whoever is saying that hasn't hit the ball 350 yards either. So
No, this is very true. But and I also think that there's a number of things that happen too. Is that for women typically start off commentating in women's sports, and in women's sports there's just a lot less funding in general for statistics and analysis and numbers and facts and figures. I mean, women's golf is a prime example. You look at men's golf, the PGA Tour has ShotLink, and you've got every single fact, figure, and number at your fingertips in real time. How players are playing, where they are on the golf course, how far they fit their drive, what the radar data is on it. Anything and everything you could possibly want is right there at your fingertips. And it's statistically, you can go back in time and see what they did in previous years and where they hit it on holes. And I mean, it's just ridiculously good how much information they have. But if you go to the LPGA Tour, I mean, you've got your very basic stats, and now they have the KPMG performance things, but those are numbers kept by caddies, which are good, but may not be as definitely not as good as the ShotLink stuff. So that what then happens is that when women talk about women's golf on TV, it's much less statistical analysis happening because we don't have access to those facts and figures. It's not that we don't know them or don't understand them, but I don't think people know that we just don't have the numbers to use them. So they assume that we don't know we don't think about it from a statistical standpoint. So it goes back to that, boys do math, women do English, that old scenario.
Wow.
It very much can get a little bit like that. And so you have to, I feel like as women's golf progresses on LPGA, the more statistical data that they can get their hands on, that they can be funded to provide them with, the better that the women have chances of broadcast, have a chance to branch out and do other golf and other men's golf and be seen more on an even playing field. But I also think it goes down to LPGA teaching pros too, because if you're watching LPGA golf, they go, oh well, they don't have TrackMan data, they don't have this or that, they don't have shot traces, they don't have blah blah blah. I want to go and see a guy pro because he must understand all that more. He must, and so it's a trickle down effect that trickles down throughout the whole industry. But I think things are changing. I think it's definitely moving. But I've been very, very lucky that I've worked for PGA Tour Live now for a number of years, and I've covered PGA Tour golf for them, and it's made me a better announcer, analyzer, because I covered the men's golf as well. And I think the more golf I can cover, all kinds of golf, whether it's LPGA, PGA Tour, college, top level amateur golf, I think that you get a better basis of knowledge, and you can formulate different opinions on things because of what you've seen from all different tours and all different styles of golf. So I'm very lucky. Again, I'm very lucky.
Right. I'm sure that makes so much sense. Being able to draw insight from what you watched on the men's tour as opposed to the LPGA tour, and then having played yourself, played college, played professional. I mean, all of that insight is like almost overwhelming how much you would have to offer, really. So something that I feel has been kind of a topic of conversation, of discussion, especially in recent years, is in comparison the disparity between on the PGA Tour versus the LPGA Tour in terms of representation of demographics. So there's on the PGA Tour there's a much larger proportion of American men as opposed to on the LPGA Tour. I think it was 8 or 9 of the top 10 from different countries, just a much different percentage in terms of representation. So, I mean, to your knowledge, to your opinion, just based on what you've seen, what you've witnessed, what you've grown up in, why do you think that this is?
All right, so I if you think about it to even your experience, I mean, you talked about being on a boys' golf team, probably only because there was one girl playing golf in your area, and that was you,
right? Partially, yep.
So there's one girl to 10 boys in America playing golf, whatever that number is. So the talent pool to pull from is a lot less from the female side. But because the LPGA is so global, you're getting the very best of every single country's women coming and playing on the LPGA tour. It's like the market hasn't been saturated with American golfers because there's not enough of them playing, because they're playing soccer or they're playing softball or they're playing tennis or they're doing other sports and stuff too. Now, I know that happens with guys, but there's so many more boys playing golf at country clubs across America. The girls, it's not the same. The ratio is like 1 to 10 or whatever it is. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but just from looking at from my own experience, like if there's one girl playing golf, you'll see 5 other boys playing golf. And that happens at every country club. So if you have 10 country clubs all doing the same thing, the chances are you're going to get 3 or 4 really good, talented boy players. You might get one talented girl player coming out of that pack, and then keeping them interested enough to keep going and playing. So what you're seeing is saturation of guy players, lots of them very talented, all trying to make it on the PGA Tour. And you're seeing a smaller number of women players, but because there are, it's like more spots available. I don't know if I'm saying this right or if I'm putting it into words properly.
Right. No, absolutely.
But I think you can get the gist of what I'm saying is that there's an opening for other countries and other players from other countries, but the very best of those other players from the other countries to come and play on the best tour in women's golf, which is the LPGA.
So, we've got a big week coming up here. Women's U.S. Open here at Pinehurst this coming week. I've got to hear your opinion. We've got Annika, Nelly, and now Michelle, 3 massive names in women's golf. How are you feeling about, Annika's willingness to come back, and Nelly, her first time back, and, Michelle now announcing that this will be her last?
You hit on it. They're the three big names right there. Annika, it's actually very courageous, I think, of her to come and play in this because the depth of talent now in women's golf is just so deep comparatively to where she walked away from it. And she's not as long as she used to be. And I know that she can't be practicing as much as she used to. She's probably putting a lot of effort into it, knowing Annika, but it can't be as much as what she was used to doing. She's a full-time mama and businesswoman. She's got a whole lot going on in her life now that she didn't have when she was playing full-time. So it's going to be hard for her. There will be an emotional uplift, I think. And much like Tiger Woods, you can never really truly underestimate Annika because she is such a competitor. But it's going to be hard for her to contend. I'm not saying to make the cut. I think she probably will make the cut because that's Annika for you. But I'm not sure about contending. Nelly, this is her first time back. What a shocker to have a blood clot in your arm and to not be able to play and have all the surgery and everything. Oh my goodness, world number 1, and this is what's going. And then all of a sudden this happens. That's just really bad luck. So I really hope that Nelly comes back and has a great tournament. I can't. Again, there's going to be a whole lot of rust in her game. Right. She's not going to be tournament ready, but how quickly she can shake that off, don't know. So again, it's a bit like, how do we know? And then Michelle,
different kind of pressure being that all eyes are on you because you're the world number 1, and then now all eyes on you because you were at world number 1 and now you're coming back off a hiatus, so.
Exactly. And Michelle, I think everybody's seen this move coming for a long time. She hasn't really been present at golf tournaments for the last few years anyway. So we all knew this was going to happen. But I think this will be a special week for her because Pine Needles is going to feel very similar to her to Pinehurst, where she won. So it's good. But I think we're going to see some fresh faces pop up on the leaderboard. I would say Hye-Jin Choi. She's a player to watch out for. Young rookie from Korea. She almost won this in 2017. So it's going to be interesting to see who comes forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm really looking forward to watching. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there, and I'm really looking
Cool.
forward. So I want to wrap things up here, Karen. I've got the five clubs, five questions for you, tradition that we have here. So number
Okay.
one, I know you notoriously love to road trip. It's kind of a thing of yours. What's a bucket list road trip for you? Somewhere that you'd love to road trip to?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, Let me think. I think I think across the top of America, like across the top, trying to find the routes around there across the northern states,
Ah.
because there are some pretty mountains, Montana and around and on through those areas. So I think going from east to west across the top of America.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So another thing, number two, another thing that you are very well known for. I know it's in your Twitter bio too. You love to cut grass. You love to mow the
Yes.
lawn. So I mean, I've got to ask, is there a specific routine? Is there a very certain way that you like it done?
Actually, I did it yesterday morning. I caught a red eye from Phoenix home, and Jerry Foltz, who lives with me here, he said that, you're not to mow today. I'm like, yeah, okay, I won't mow. I need to rest and rest up from the red eye. Next thing he knows, I'm on the mower mowing. So there is. I specifically, I do the back first, and I have my routes planned, and
Okay.
I do my donuts around the palm trees and things, and so I have a lot of fun doing that. And then I go to the front and I make the front all look pretty. And then we have this area outside. We live on a lake, but in the summer, the lake water drops so low that you can mow an extra portion of the yard out the front. So that's one of my favorite bits to mow because it's completely square and flat and perfect. And so I get to
Waiting
do my
for you.
lines up and down. I know. You can tell I'm probably more passionate about my mowing than I am the golf right now.
No, no way. But that's awesome. Oh, you have
One of
more?
my biggest, I do. One of my biggest dreams on mowing, though, would be to get to a golf course and to mow all the rough down on a golf course. Somewhere like Oakmont would be blissful, just to take
Oh
all the
my
rough
goodness.
down everywhere so that everybody's ball could roll into all the trouble, into the bunkers. That anyway,
Wow.
that's my thing is to have a golf course with no rough and just mow it all down. Yeah, that would be me.
Wow. Wow.
So
That's too
don't
funny.
so don't let me loose on the golf course if you want your rough
I
intact.
feel Wow. That's hilarious. That's awesome. Okay, number three. So like we've said, you've just got back from the women's national championship. If you could choose any course for a college national championship, what would it be?
Anywhere in the world?
Sure, sure. Well, yeah, sure.
Let's go St Andrews, the home of
Okay.
golf.
Yeah.
Why not take it there? If not, Pebble Beach would be kind of cool.
I'm sure they would not be us college kids would not be complaining to play either. So, all right, number four. We were talking about all the different golf swings. Talking about, you mentioned Jim Furyk. Everyone's kind of got a favorite golf swing or a golf swing that they love to watch on the tour. If you could have any golf swing on the LPGA or PGA tour, who would you pick?
Oh, oh, um, Amy Yang.
Okay. Okay. Why is that?
Amy Yang. I just have always loved her golf swing. Again, she's not a player that you hear much of. I mean, she's won. She won in Thailand on the LPGA, but she has the most magnificent golf swing because she does something that I could never do with mine. And I was always up and out quick. Like I could never go low and left through. And I've always wanted to finish. I always was working hard on that low left through the ball. She has low left to die for through the ball. Like she just is so. It's just such a beautiful golf swing to watch.
Wow.
There are so many good golf swings now out there, but for me, I've always admired Amy's.
Isn't it funny how the grass is always greener? I mean, there's always something about your own golf swing that you wish that you had that somebody has, and you're just like, wow,
Yep.
I just love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's too
Exactly.
funny. That's too funny. So, okay, fifth and final question. So, like I've said, you have been a part of the game in so many ways. You've really witnessed its evolution. I'm sure your perspective on the game has shifted now, being a commentator and broadcaster and watching it as opposed to when you were playing competitively. So, what is now, knowing what you know, what is one sentence in a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self as a player and as a broadcaster?
As a player, it would be know that you are really good at this game, because I felt like I was not very good and that I could be better. And I judge myself against other people all the time. And now as a broadcaster, I look back and I see my name in statistics and I see myself above Annika Sorenstam in some categories or above, other players. I'm like, wow, how could I be, how could I have thought that I was that bad when I was actually really very good? But that's everybody's, the perception of me when I played. I always felt like I needed more. I needed to be better. I wasn't good enough. But now I know that I was. And it pains me to think that I was that hard on myself and my self-opinion was so low.
Wow.
Because it wasn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, and how about as a broadcaster? What advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say keep doing what you're doing, because I have no regrets on what I've done and how I've got here. And in fact, I feel incredibly lucky to be doing what I am.
Well, I mean, congratulations to you, Karen. Obviously, that's a testament to what a great person that you are. You were undeniably yourself, and it's gotten you to where you are today. So congratulations. It has been such a pleasure sitting down with you today. I mean, really, I look up to you in so many ways, and it's an honor to have a little bit of your time today. So thank you so much for joining me.
Well, I've enjoyed it, and you've made me think a lot, which is good. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Karen Stupples for joining me today. I learned so much this morning. It has been an absolute pleasure to sit down with her. And thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in today on 5 Clubs.